We are recording.
We are recording.
I did Marcel's job for him yet again. I don't know what he was doing. He was like looking at a butterfly or something in the corner.
don't get us started on producer. We can go on all day. If you know any good producers.
Yeah.
Someone who's good at logistics, that's all we need.
Yeah. Sorry, Marcel.
Didn't realise you were here. Welcome to Cloud Reality's live and original podcast from Capgemini, and this week co-sponsored by AWS. And we are live at the Venetian here in Las Vegas at reInvent 2025. I'm Dave Chapman.
I'm Esmee.
And I'm Rob Kernahan.
And I am delighted to say that we have got Tanuja Randery with us. Tanuja is the MD for EMEA at AWS. Tanuja, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm really excited to be back.
Good to have you back.
With Cloud Realities. So
Yeah.
I obviously did decently the first time.
I think so.
Back, which is wonderful. And yeah, great to be here at reInvent.
I know, another year, another reInvent. How's it feeling for you this year?
Yeah, it's been really, really buzzy. The energy is super high. We've got multi thousands of customers here, as you know, and partners. And as you're walking the hallways, I mean, it's just busy. But I can see what's really exciting to me about reInvent is it's a really builder conference. You know, where you know you've got these developers here, you've got very senior people, but everyone's into building this year.
Right.
So and you can feel that. You can really feel that. Of course, the announcements have been very exciting.
It's really interesting you should say that, because we've been observing something quite similar actually, which is maybe some of the major pivotal announcements that we've seen over the last few years. They're not so much in the conversation, but what is in the conversation is a seriousness about scaling, seriousness about like toolkits, security, those sorts of things. Does that pen picture work for you?
I'm really glad you picked up on this. I mean, look, I'm super proud of how we're going about launching innovation at a time when all our customers are obviously thinking super hard about how they're going to embrace this generative AI and frankly, agentic technology. But what I love about AWS is we always start with scaling at the core. Like we don't add scaling. It's very hard to do that. And you'll have heard Andy talk a lot about the concept of primitives, where every time we build something we know has to scale. And so when I think about the announcements we've made, it is all about give our customers and partners the tools they need with all of the knowledge and architectural experience we've got, with all of the security that our customers, enterprise grade, critical infrastructure around the world runs on AWS. Right. Give them all of that wonderful tooling so that they can go build.
Very good.
And I think this is the whole ethos of Amazon and AWS is about democratizing access to technology, to AI, to skills. We just want to make it possible for the world to embrace this at scale.
And what of the key announcements over the last couple of days? What's standing out for you?
I have three. I mean, I could probably spend the whole time talking about announcements,
couple of really
but I will
interesting
not do
ones
that.
for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to get your take on it too. But the three that are really on my mind, obviously I have to start with the one I'm super proud of, which is the AWS AI factories.
Yeah, right.
Because I think it's a very unique way for us to be able to help governments and regulated industries take advantage of this technology and have that extra layer, right, of sovereignty that they require.
Yeah, indeed.
And working obviously closely with NVIDIA to drive this, but also with our own Trainium
Sovereignty
chips.
is such a hot topic, particularly in Europe at the moment.
It is. But, look, I'll come back to that because there's something else I would love to add. But I think I don't know if you heard Matt's keynote, but we announced our relationship with Humane, the national AI champion of Saudi Arabia. And actually, we announced the launch of an AI zone, as we used to call it, in Saudi Arabia. And then the world of AWS AI factories came out of that experience. So I love that we always start with these customer problems and work backwards. And then we scale it. So now it's a product that a lot of people can get. So I'm very happy about that, actually, in particular, and what we're doing in the Middle East. So that was one big announcement that really stood out for me. The second really big one in my mind is everything we're doing around AWS Transform Custom. Why do I say that? There is just so much legacy in the enterprise in particular, and in a lot of governments code, that is always taken very, very long.
Right.
To transform. And now we are providing people and customers a very easy way to move from old code to new code.
Yeah, I find it interesting because it's like a services and technology offer, right? Because it's acknowledging the 360-degree challenges that come with that. It's not just about the tech.
It's never just about the tech.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. But this is a accelerated now way for people to exit their mainframes, old code, usually things that could have taken years and years. And the tech debt is huge, right? So this really helps crush tech debt. I love the way Matt actually showed that to us on stage, which was pretty cool. So that's a biggie, I think. And then the third one is everything around agents. But I'll tell you what it was about the Agent Core announcement that I think was very cool is, again, back to what you said, the core tooling that customers need, the security, the observability, the frameworks, everything provided to you in this platform that you can go deploy to all of your employees so they can start to innovate on your behalf. So you don't rely on an R&D department to innovate, you know. And that is what I really thought was very exciting about Agent Core, is giving you the things that we, AWS, and only we, to be honest, can build at that level.
Well, it feels like it's felt like for the last year or so that like a scaling framework for it is sort of building out. So the tool sets are becoming clearer and clearer in the elements of scaling that you need, which is like obviously everybody's starting at like let 1,000 flowers bloom points, proof of concept, but that doesn't necessarily scale. It scales as an innovation, but it doesn't scale from a management layer perspective.
Correct.
So bringing that in now.
And to add to that, it's slightly more opinionated. So occasionally AWS have said, here's all the building blocks, you decide. And with Agent Core and things like that, it's inserting your opinion on how you should do this, which guides customers more gently towards the answer, which is good. It's a nice evolution of the way you approach your tooling and saying, hey, look, why don't you do it like this? And here's some great examples of how you can make it work. So that was quite cool to see.
And you still have all those building blocks.
All the flexibility is still there. Yeah, we don't get rid of that.
But I do agree with you. I think there's something very robust about, and someone told one of my customers, I was talking to them this morning, and they said to me, Amazon Bedrock is the best built and architected inference platform, right? Because as Matt says, you need the AI infrastructure, and we should come back to that. You need the inference platform.
Yeah.
You need the data sets available to you, and I want to come back to the final one that I love in the announcement. And then you need, of course, the tools and the building blocks to be able to deploy agents. But look, I'll tell you one thing across all of this. This is so key: is security is at the heart of everything we do. And so when we talk about giving you a way of ensuring that all your policies, right, all your regulatory requirements, everything you need to do around the who has access to data is built in a way so that the agents can actually go deploy at scale and not be worried about the implications of doing that. Because what is preventing our customers today from going even faster is that they are worried, right, about what implications these agents might have as they learn from themselves, right? But now we've got, as Matt says, the adulting around it. So responsible AI was one big takeaway for me from this conference.
I think it's one of the biggest questions of probably our careers, like the ethical and responsible deployment of AI and the way that it's framed and the way that society understands it. For me, it's such an important debate for us right now. Like, I mean, it's not going. I don't think it's going too far to say, like, from a human perspective, like it's that material. Like the technology advancements we've seen over the last, let's say, 15 years with the advent of the cloud have been absolutely enormous. But a lot of it has been stripping out how bad IT was previously, with like long lead times and slow cycle times and getting in the way of the business and CapEx investments. And it's taken all of that and gone like, no, utility, no barrier to entry, super fast, blah, blah, all super interesting. It's changed a lot of how the world works, etc. AI is something bigger and different though, isn't it?
Look, I think it is the most transformative thing that has happened in probably all our lifetime, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
And I think we would even say potentially more than the internet, if you can say that.
I think that's probably true.
It really is. And I'll tell you what we're seeing in terms of adoption in EMEA in particular, because obviously I do wake up every morning thinking about EMEA, but what we are seeing is that the adoption of AI now across Europe, Middle East, and Africa is outpacing the adoption of the mobile phones in the 2000s. Okay.
Wow. I mean, that's a good stat, isn't it?
And we've seen in the past year alone, and this is a thing, by the way, about AI, because it's not just the technology, it's the speed.
Yeah.
It's the speed of
unparalleled.
Absolutely. In the innovation and in the adoption. We saw a 30% increase in adoption in AI in Europe. 5 businesses every minute.
Yeah.
Okay, which I think is a pretty cool stat.
It's unbelievable.
And the implications to economic impact. Because in the end, look, what's the point of technology if we cannot drive improved economic impact, more societal change, a more sustainable future, all of these things, right? So the implications on economic impact for Europe is upwards of $600 billion from just the AI technology.
Right.
If you add in cloud, digital solutions, et cetera, you're talking 3.2 trillion. And look, we do in Europe, we need to get Europe back on the global stage. And the way we're going to get Europe back on the global stage is to ensure that they can wonderfully embrace this technology, make sure that they're absolutely part of the regulatory environment and everything we need, but they're embracing this technology at scale.
And Europe particularly has struggled with productivity. That's been the thing that's held the economic, price point per energy and also productivity. And you sort of go, these are the tools that will allow us to potentially unlock a huge part of that.
Yeah.
What do you think is actually one of the signals why it's not happening? Or what is blocking in some ways?
Look, in Europe, and let me pick up on Europe, but I think some of these are globally the things. So, it is happening. It's happening differently with digital natives like startups versus enterprise. And that's why I think some of the things we talked about earlier, like AWS Transform, is going to be very helpful for enterprise, security, all that kind of stuff that enterprises worry about a lot. But there are 3 things that are barriers. The first is in Europe, funding, right? Venture capital funding, private and public funding for startups and the startup ecosystem. I'm in this wonderful group of startups. We talk a lot over WhatsApp about what's going on. And one of the biggest concerns they have in Europe is having that funding available to them.
It's almost... It's cultural in the US that that VC entrepreneurialism, and then there's an industry around that. Of course, it's perhaps we've lost the what's the right word?
Well,
is it there in Europe at the moment?
Well, I tell you what. Listen, Europe has a history of innovation beyond anywhere else. We have the best universities, right? My son went to Cambridge. I mean, it was brilliant university. We've got incredible amounts of research grants and funding that happens. I think we've just got to stimulate further the startup ecosystem. We have unicorns, by the way. We have many unicorns in Europe.
Sure.
We're serving them, Lovable. Wow, I'm building on Lovable, phenomenal. Synthesia, look at what they're doing. 11 Labs, what are they doing? We have incredible startups, but funding needs to continue. And by the way, one of the areas Europe is now outpacing funding on the VC side is defense tech. I think we could have a real role to play on the defense tech side.
So the issue in the pipe, if you like, for you is all of the sort of the brain power is there, the education pipeline is there, but the actual thing that kicks that into viable business, that's the missing
It's the final
element.
part. The scaling is the end of the VC funding cycle, and often it will be sold before it is implemented and scaled, and that's the bit that I think we need to get holding ground on that last stage of funding.
We just need to lean in to these startups because we don't want them to leave Europe. Let's be honest.
Right.
But I'd say there's 2 other things, because it's not just about funding. I think the second thing is regulatory environment. And look, I think we respect regulation. right?
Rob respects regulation. He loves it.
Oh, it's
AWS
best
has been
conversation you can ever have.
working- We've been working with regulators around the world. We think it's important. We think data protection is important. But I think we need to make sure that regulation is innovation friendly, that it enables experimentation, that it doesn't become so much of a burden that people are spending more on regulatory compliance than on technology that will enable them. I'll give you a stat. What the European businesses are telling us is that they're spending 40 euros out of every 100 euros that they could spend on tech on compliance.
Wow.
Now, that cannot continue.
No, it's not right.
I'm excited to see regulators leaning into this. And in fact, you will have seen that we announced the launch of our European sovereign cloud at the back end of this year in Germany, working closely with the German regulators. And that is our first, by the way, cloud built, operated, and secured in Europe.
It feels like, I think, a real sophistication step, like where the cloud historically, and I was early adopter of AWS in particular when I was back in days on the client side, and we did a lot of the BP migration. And I loved the abstraction of the cloud. Like it was, as a sort of a previous architect and a technology transformation person, I'm like, right, brilliant. I can forget about the physical infrastructure, buy this as a utility. It's all abstracted. You could do lots of architectural stuff to make yourself resilient across regions and things like that. And I must admit, I used to think at the time, purely personal view, that a lot of sovereignty was just NIMBYism. It's like, why are we here? But I think what's happened with a maturing of the sovereignty conversation in the last 3 years, I think, is really interesting. And having to think about supply chains, and it's much more about just data now. It's like, kind of how these things can work independently. It almost has taken some of the abstraction out of what Cloud 1.0 was doing, but in a really more nuanced and interesting way, I think.
Yeah, I think I think I do understand the sovereignty conversations. We just have to be careful, as I said earlier, that we don't let it be the reason why Europe cannot compete. Okay,
absolutely.
I think we all feel very passionately about Europe. We are investing at scale in Europe, by the way. I mean, just another fact, since 2010, we've invested over $300 billion in infrastructure in Europe. We support over 600,000 jobs across Europe. We've been investing in skills development, 3.3 million in EMEA trained for free. So all of this is really important. And we are investing so our customers can innovate. So what we don't want to do is have that innovation cycle interrupted because of this. But recognizing that there are government workloads and highly regulated workloads that do require this, we have leaned in with this, almost 8 billion euro investment into Germany to launch the European Sovereign Cloud. So now our customers can have something that is, by the way, the full AWS cloud as you know it, not some watered down version, a full cloud, but disconnected and powered and supported by European citizens, right? With an independent board, its own governance and controls. And I love what we've done, because this is what I do love about what we do is we understand what's going on the ground, and then we find a technology way to solve the problem. And then the final thing, and probably the thing that is on all our minds, and one we are very passionate about, and I'm personally very passionate about, is skills. I think it's probably the biggest blocker of it all.
A perennial problem in tech.
And we've got to go fix it.
Right.
I mean, 2/3 of customers, European businesses, are saying to us that is the biggest problem, right? They can't find the skills they need. We all know that the jobs of the future are going to be digital. We know this. I'm very optimistic about the impact of AI, by the way, on inclusion, on diversity. I'm very optimistic about the fact that while some jobs will go away, this will absolutely fuel productivity growth and more jobs.
One of the things that's always been the problem with the skills pipeline in tech goes all the way back to, kind of secondary school education almost, making sure the right diversity of groups get involved in it, big enough cohorts get involved in it, and then actually the curriculums themselves are actually setting us up to do something interesting. Is that was always a problem, wasn't it, for multiple different reasons? So that are you observing that the very roots of the situation improving?
Absolutely, by the way. And I think we're not only observing, we are doing. And so we've got a huge number of programs that we have deployed in schools, in universities. We're working with a number of partners to get girls coding early. We've got the AWS Skills Builders, which is very important for reskilling. Let's not forget reskilling. Yeah. Longevity has become a thing right now. We are all going to be living longer lives, I think,
So.
I believe. And then
Dave
we have to...
this week in Vegas.
No,
he's not.
And look, healthcare and life science is going to be fully impacted, and beautifully so, I think, with the impact of AI. So as you think about longevity, we're all going to, we're not retiring at 60, right? We're going to have to be, having a future with many more years, and so reskilling is important. And it's got to be done in AI. We've got to train people on using these tools.
I think Japan's been here for a long time with their demographic. They've been understanding that robotics, especially taking care of the elderly, will have to be embedded within, and they've experimented with a load of things. But what AI is going to help do is bring a much richer interface to that robotic healthcare, etc. And I think personalize it a bit better, but make it more capable, because there is a demographic issue, and we'll have to accept that it won't be a human that may be taking care of us in the future.
Rob has been hoping for a sort of a cross between a robot butler and a robot nurse for some time now.
That's the future.
And the technology industry is not there yet, Tanuja. So if you can do anything.
Yeah, I watched TV in the 50s, or the element of the TV that was created in the 50s and 60s, always a robot butler doing everything for you. And I am still waiting. Where's
look, I tell you, Alexa Plus is super cool.
Look at that.
Very good.
That's professional right there.
Reimagine the brain of Alexa, leveraging Amazon Nova as well as Claude, and she can now do a lot of things for you. But what is wonderful is she can now plan, reason, and act on your behalf.
Much more sophisticated.
So you book tickets, you can manage your home better. She is a butler if you want to. Or butleress, I don't know.
But yeah.
What is your perspective on the skilling part? Because I understand the technical skills part, but we're talking about autonomous technology, and that requires trust and culture in teams as well. Are teams ready? Do you think teams are ready to let the technology run itself, and are leaders ready to let go of that?
It's a great question. So let's talk a little bit about not just skilling, as you say, but the development and nurturing of what we are calling an AI mindset, right? And there are 4 things around that I think are important, capabilities that are important. And you might have heard some of this at reInvent this year as well. But the first is, when you think about leaders and leadership in a time of AI, it cannot be about, let's go back to the Industrial Revolution. During the Industrial Revolution, it was all about, we had to move at speed. During the digital revolution, it was all about adapting to this new way of working, right? Now, when you come to AI, we believe it is about scaling with clarity and not control. What does that mean? It's about providing the guardrails to our teams to be able to leverage this technology to not only improve their own productivity, but to really drive innovation at the edge, right? For businesses, customers, societal problems, right? Reducing wildfires, right? It's not just about business problems. So when we talk about leadership in the age of AI, it is about giving our teams the empowerment to be able to work within this new world and not micromanaging them, right? And this is this adulting point that, Matt was talking about, right? And so I'll give you an example from Amazon. How do we do that? Amazon, we have something that we call about one-way doors and two-way doors. Two-way doors, you can come back. And so let people make two-way door decisions.
Yep.
If they make mistakes, they come back. Give them the guardrails, though, right? So they can make those two-way door decisions within safe constructs, right? So make sure, for example, you have, biases removed from the tools that you're using, and we do that with Amazon Bedrock Guardrails as an example. Make sure you have automated reasoning so the results coming back from the models are vetted, right? So give them the guardrails, but let them experiment at scale.
Do you see organizations actually also touch upon that point? So not just get everyone certified, but really help managers and leaders and team leaders to, emphasize that behavior, because that's a huge challenge.
So I think there are many organizations that are able to work in that manner and do, right? But I think this is something that we, Amazon, spend a lot of time with our customers, not only talking about tech. We actually run these things called culture of innovation sessions. And then it's not just even about just the one-way, two-way doors, right? Let's go to, what are the tools and the mechanisms that allow teams to work in a more effective manner, right? So again, within Amazon, we have tools like the PR FAQ document. What is this? It's the press release FAQ document, right? So if you have an idea, start with a doc. Start with a real problem you're trying to solve. Don't just deploy technology. Start with a problem you want to solve and ask yourself what Matt said. Why not?
One of the things that, just building as his point here about the changing nature of leadership in organizations to take advantage of those sorts of things. One of the things I see is there's a couple of things that I see that organizations struggle to get their heads around. One is the actual shift in individual leadership. So,
yes.
you have to go from I'm no longer a hierarchical leader. I can bellow and people, just because they're in my hierarchy, will kind of trot along. This inverts that quite profoundly, I think. And then the other thing that comes along with that inversion is often the changing delegation rules in the organization.
Correct.
That comes from board level, right? It's like that is an executive board decision to change that delegation framework. Are you seeing organizations kind of take digital change that seriously at C-level?
Yeah, I am actually. And actually, it's a great one you bring up, because in addition to this leadership, top down, how do we think about empowering organizations to innovate at scale securely and responsibly? I think the shape of organizations, the organizational models that we've seen in the past are not necessarily going to be the ones of the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you all saw the article in the FT recently where, PwC, you guys and McKinsey, they're all thinking about, should it be box shaped or inverted pyramid or whatever. I will not
give a preference.
I will not. I don't have one. I'm not sure what the right answer is yet. I think this will evolve. What we know for sure is that humans and agents will have to work together, right? We are going to have teams of humans and agents. It's not even going to be just humans being the managers, right? The agents could be the managers, right? Yeah. We want agents running when we're asleep, right? We've just introduced, by the way, a tool around this. So, this is the shape of change that's going to happen. And by the way, what's wonderful about the agentic side is they will be diverse agents.
Right.
I mean, agents are not going to all look the same. So managers are going to have to learn how to work within this new environment. We have to have a whole different world of training on first-line managers. How do you think about agents? How do you manage agents? How do you give them feedback?
I also think that in that paradigm, it's probably a bit much to try and get into today, but the notion of anthropomorphization, which I can never say.
I'm not saying that.
One day, Dave.
Honestly, I will get there one day. But to your point, though, agents don't necessarily, we don't have to necessarily think about them as pseudo other humans. We could think about them as droids or just things or whatever it might be. And it's that's going to be quite hard to get your head around. You know what I mean? That's a wholly different paradigm.
There's a societal thing there about the workforce of the future will have to learn that it might be an agent that's leading them, directing them, they're reporting back to.
You're looking forward to it.
It's important that we don't risk. Here's what I think is, coming back to one of the examples, it's important that we don't have agents becoming bottlenecked. We can't have it where the human's always pushing the button. We just we just lost
That's
all the gains.
That's the productivity point, isn't it? Yeah.
So, sure. but we do need to make sure that we are the policies, the tone of voice, the culture of the organization is being embedded in the agents, right? And then agents are learning. Look, I'm very excited about the fact that skill sets that are becoming impossible to now gain can be embedded in agents, right? So you can really do all that. I'll give you an example of a company that I love what they're doing. Schaeffler, the German industrial manufacturer, has deployed actually an agentic framework governance where they're actually enabling their teams to leverage the technology. They've embedded the policies into this agentic framework, and they're letting their teams now work along with these guidelines. And I love that because that is a institutional German organization with a lot of history, but they know that their future is to actually deploy at scale, right?
Yeah.
And so I love what they're doing. Veolia is doing something very similar in France, which I really like as well, again, And so in addition to deploying technology, I think leadership changes, organizational models changes, governance, the way we govern and how we manage risk is going to actually change. And then, of course, at the end of the day, look, I always say it's all going to be back to each of us individually.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? How are we going to grow and develop, right? And the time now it's exciting to be able to learn and be curious again.
Yeah, so we've been ending most of the show by just asking our guests and observing a little bit that the world of sort of fictional technology, which has been with us for years and been actually very instrumental in terms of inspiring how we actually develop real-world technology, is really crossed over with real-world technology. You just have to go and look on the expo floor, and there's stuff down there that would be in fiction even 5 years ago. I mean, we haven't got flying cars right yet. I will say that the flying car thing.
Don't.
Yeah. Does it look like a bad helicopter or a flying car?
No,
That's the question.
Zoox is amazing. Our autonomous cars.
Oh, the car, the car, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they look a bit minority
They're
reported,
gorgeous
don't they?
because they're not like a normal taxi, right? They're like in a lounge.
They've reimagined it. There's no driver's seat. They've gone the social face each other.
I love
very cool.
Very different to Waymo, which is just a car, which is autonomous, which is good. Being in one, they're all good, but the Zoox look far more social.
I prefer Marcel as the driver
They're
than a
more
Waymo.
social. Thank you for saying that. That was one of the actually design principles.
Yeah, being
They're
more
very
social.
good. But are there any actual works of fiction that you think are manifesting themselves now in a good or bad representation of technology?
Look, I'm going to, not because of our affinity with space, but I'm going to say Star Trek comes to mind, right?
It's a good one.
You mentioned robot butlers. Look, I think in Star Trek, you press the button, right? Your coffee's been served.
Oh, no, there you go.
I love that. I actually love the community aspect of Star Trek. The way different diverse communities come together for a common purpose. I love the life in space thing. I think, who knows, right? I know we're very busy, as you know, launching our satellites and then...
Well, also the representation of AI in Star Trek and how it integrates in terms of the computer is really
very
interesting.
agentic
right?
in its style.
Very agentic in its style. And I love the way that, in Star Trek, you can also be doing, you remember the room in Star Trek where you can go with the holograms? Yeah, the holodecks. Imagine how agents could be teaching us to be better in different skills. So yes, I think that is a good representation.
Well,
one of the few very positive views of the future with tech. The rest are quite,
I'm just an eternal optimist.
What a nice note to end on.
Thank you.
Want to dive deeper in today's topic and what they might mean for you and your business? Drop us a line at cloudrealities@capgemini.com. We're all on Substack and on LinkedIn, so connect, DM, and send us your questions for future episodes. And hey, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us improve the show. A big thanks to Tanuja, our sound and editing residents Ben and Louis, producer Marcel, and of course you for tuning in. See you in another Reinvent Reality soon.